Ben, let's talk about the National Emergency Act at the border. How should this go down and why?
I mean, the truth is that the president really should use 10 U.S.C. 284. That's the provision of law that allows the Secretary of Defense to declare certain areas of the border drug corridors, and then the president can simply build additional fencing there. That doesn't require the invocation of a national emergency. It's a power the president already has. He does have funding available under the Defense Department to do some of that. And all the areas that he's talking about, the ones that smuggle people, also happens to be the ones that smuggle drugs. That doesn't mean he has to declare the entire border a drug corridor, but he can certainly declare kind of the most high-trafficked areas of the border drug corridors. The reason that I prefer that approach is because once you have presidents starting to declare national emergencies when they can't get something through Congress, that's an incredibly dangerous precedent. Now, I hear folks on the right side of the aisle, and generally Republicans, conservatives, they'll say things like, well, if Democrats had this power, they would do it. Look how Barack Obama expanded executive power under his watch. Mm-hmm. That's true. But there is a difference between there are two problems with that argument. One is, right, we're the conservatives. That's what we're supposed to not do. And two, there's a difference between making the argument Democrats have already expanded the power and we fear Democrats will expand the power. So now we're going to preemptively expand the power, handing them a tool without any excuse for us to fight back against it. Because believe it or not, there will be a Democratic president again, whether it's in 2 years or whether it's in 4 or whether it's at some point, whether we're in 6, it doesn't. At some point, there will be a Democratic president. And the Democrats that we're watching right now are already saying that climate change is a national emergency. They're saying it's the greatest emergency that has ever faced the country. They're invoking things like World War II as comparison items. Well, if you think that they won't declare a national emergency over climate change and then say, okay, well, President Trump built a wall on the border, what we need to do is retrofit and wreck every existing structure in the United States, as AOC said in the Green New Deal. You got another thing coming. These people want power, and any excuse to take it will be used.
I think the Democrats actually want Trump to use this. Because it will give them the green light to really, truly become a dictator. You can do anything. It's the difference between this as national emergency is this one is tied directly to the purse strings. So the president can do whatever he wants after trying to get it through Congress 3 times, not being able to get it through Congress. And so then he shuts down the government, still can't get it. Well, now he can control the purse strings without going through Congress. That is absolutely unconstitutional. And even if there is an emergency, we should not set this precedent. We've got to be able to stop the Democrats from doing this. When they want to do all of the things that they've already tweeted. Great, declare a national emergency because we think it's a national emergency on X, Y, and Z. And they've already said it.
Yeah, then they're not really hiding the ball here. And one of the things that I find to be such a problem here is that, when President Trump talks about the national emergency at the border, there's no question that in a colloquial sense we have an emergency at the border, but that emergency at the border has been there for 35 years.
Yes.
It's not as though things have radically ramped up in recent years. The numbers are actually down in terms of border crossings. That's not to undermine the idea that there's a serious problem at the border. But the whole point here is that if President Trump is running on the platform of I'm going to secure the border and Democrats won't allow me to do so, well, then run on that. I mean, if Democrats don't want to secure the border, then they should be made to defend that. But to expand executive power simply by saying Congress won't give me what I want, so I'm going to do what I want anyway, and I'm going to grab money to do it, it's a danger. It's just the wrong thing to do. And frankly, I don't see the upside except for some temporary politically expedient headlines. The wall is not going to get built under these auspices. It's just not. I mean, there will be courts that strike it down and create injunctions. It's already 2019. The idea that the wall is going to be completed by 2020, by the time of the election, I think is a fool's errand. At the best, you're going to get maybe 10 to 15, 20 miles. You're not going to get a massive build before the election. So what is the trade here? The trade is the power of the executive to now centralize this kind of authority in one branch of government away from the legislature. And in return, you get a little bit of border fencing. That ain't going to cut it.
Everybody in the line of secession, including the president, dropped dead from a shellfish attack. You're Jewish. You haven't had any. So you're like, okay, I'm next in line. What does President Shapiro do today about this?
Well, I mean, the first thing that I do about the border situation, as I say, is I invoke 10 U.S.C. 284. I declare that there are drug corridors along the border that need to be protected. I already have the statutory authority to do that, and I build fencing there. And then the next thing I do is I go out on the campaign trail, and I say every day the Democrats don't have any interest in protecting the border. They have been attempting to ratchet down security at the border. I mean, this is a campaign issue. Bottom line is the American people need to make up their minds as to whether they think this is important enough to merit an actual change in policy at the border. I fail to understand how the president can simultaneously claim that his program is immensely popular in terms of building a border wall, and at the same time refuse to campaign on that against Democrats and instead declare a national emergency and just do it from the executive seat.
Ben, when Obama tried to pitch DACA a million times to Congress and got rejected, and then decided afterwards that he did have the authority he said he didn't have over and over and over again, it was my opinion that they didn't even believe they had this authority. Because if they did, they wouldn't have gone to Congress over and over again. The same thing here. Yeah. I mean, it's not like Donald Trump goes to ask Nancy Pelosi's permission because he thinks it's fun. They obviously felt they needed this authority to get this money and now are going the exact opposite way. I mean, it's a terrible precedent, and I don't even think they believe it.
That is a great point. I mean, we just had a large-scale government shutdown, the longest partial government shutdown in U.S. history. What was the point of all that if the president could have just, using his authority, declared a national emergency and been done with it? Why not just do that?
Why is he not using 1084?
I think the reason that he's not using 10284 is because he believes that if he declares a national emergency, then he's going to be able to go back to his voters and say, listen, I did all I can do. I think he understands that he's not going to get a border wall built before 2020. He's going to be able to blame the courts if they stop it. He's going to say, listen, as president of the United States, I used all the authority that I could possibly have even thought about to try and get this done for you. Give me Congress. So I think it's an election tactic.
So in other words, he wants the I wasn't able to do it, but I will do it next time, as opposed to, look, I did all I can. Help me get some people in here that will actually pass this, and we're already taking the steps that I legally can. He thinks that's a bigger win the other way?
Yeah, I mean, the president tends to be a man of extremes. And I think that he when he looks at this, I think he wants to be able to say to people, listen, the maximum amount of authority that I was told I had by my own lawyers, that's what I tried to use here. And courts held it up. And the courts are stacked, and we have to change the courts. And the Democrats have stacked against me, and we need to throw them out of office. Again, I don't think this is a practical strategy that is directed at actually building border fencing. I think this is a strategy that is directed at getting stopped in court and then being able to blame the Senate, blame the courts. I don't like politics being played with the Constitution. And so, they're the only Republican I've seen who stood tall on this is actually Justin Amash in the House. But I think that, frankly, if the founders believed that the branches of government were going to check one another, they did not believe that party loyalty was going to be able to overcome branch loyalty. So a member of the legislature who's a Republican should still stand up for the legislature when a Republican president encroaches on the authority of the legislature. They're wrong about that, obviously, because people now don't care. I mean, people in the legislature are happy to toss more authority to the executive branch so long as it means escaping censure from their own constituents back home.